let's look at some of these questions and comments. Piero148 says, I have this exact car as a company car and I agree with everything you say. And I would say this alludes to the quality of the cars, of Mazda. Because every time I test them, I always say, oh, they feel so nice, they feel quality, like they're well built together, they feel premium. And this is true. So I would completely agree with that comment, which is completely agreeing with everything I say. So that's good. And Mario Jäger43 just said, I've ordered a CX-30 in platinum quartz. I was blown away by the attention to detail and quality, which easily rivals BMW and Lexus. So this is the same thing then. It just feels very nice, very premium. The only two things I would say is the automatic transmission sometimes can shift a little rough, and the doors, when you open and close them, from the inside it feels fine, it sounds fine, but from the outside it sounds a little bit hollow. It's blast from the past, but not really blast from old cars that were just, you know, tin roofs and I don't know, everything else that just felt hollow. Verulium says, I'm probably butchering these names, my consumption is 5.7 liters per 100 kilometers. Same engine, fantastic car, so silent on the highway. Right now I've got 5.8. I had 5.9. I had 5.8 before, but now I'm, you know, sitting a lot with AC on and lots of traffic. So yeah, this X engine doesn't necessarily feel as powerful as it should with 186 horsepower. It doesn't have the torque of a turbocharged engine either, but it will happily sit at like 1,100 RPMs in fifth, where you're going 40, and it will be very quiet, refined, and fairly economical as well. Uriel Ottaviani says, I don't get why everybody talks so much about the torsion beam. Well, I mentioned it because it is essentially a downgrade, however you look at it, because before Mazda has, I believe, multi-link suspension in the back as well, and now, well, it's a torsion beam. I think that was done for cost measures and so on. And Mazda says the car is still just as sporty as before, and for 99.9% of users, I would say I agree. But if you really go sporty and you really go to the limit, which you shouldn't anyway on public roads, then yeah, it's definitely not going to feel as planted as a car with multi-link suspension would be. Robert William 9558 says, do you know if the Skyactiv X in the Mazda 3 will ever arrive in the United States? And on the other hand, Paul A says, do you know if the 2.5 turbo in the Mazda 3 will ever arrive in Europe? Well, for the Skyactiv X, I don't really have a lot of information, but I believe that there is currently nothing in sight. Maybe Mazda is working on something for the US, but I don't think anything is coming there yet. So unfortunately, I'll still try to ask Mazda themselves about it, but I don't think there's anything happening there. As for the 2.5 turbo, I don't think it's sold anywhere around here, maybe in some specific countries in Europe, but for Europe in general, it doesn't really make sense because it's a 2.5 liter turbocharged engine, gas engine, in a relatively small car in Europe with very high gas prices, so it doesn't really make sense. Paul A also wonders, I wonder if you've tested the slightly more powerful 186 horsepower engine, the X1. And yeah, that's a bit of an old comment because, well, I've tested it a few times already and I have it in here as well. And the answer to sort of answer is also, you don't really feel the difference, but it does have a little bit more power, a little bit more torque, a little less emissions. So basically it's a little more refined. PillRed5974 says, great review, terrible sound quality at times, which was a shame as it spoiled it a bit. Yeah, that's our bad. We had some problems. We're still having some problems with audio, unfortunately. And yeah, nothing else I can say apart from thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the review and sorry about the sound quality. We'll try to do better. Kayak1969P says, I have the Mazda 3 Sport Lux Auto version in Soul Red Crystal, so this color. and I'm loving my car even a year after purchase. So that's excellent to hear. I would happily say that if I were to buy this car for myself, I would most likely be very, very happy with it after a while. I mean, I've tested so many of these now with this engine and with various equipment levels and so on. It's just a very, very, very nice car. Of course, I haven't owned it for a year or more, but it is a lovely car. And from what I hear, these engines don't really have many problems at all. Pinarisit, I'm probably butchering that completely, says, very nice review. Gorgeous scenery too. Slovenia, it's on my bucket list of places to go. Just lovely. Thank you. Yes, it is Slovenia. We have a lot of nice places here, a lot of nature. Most people call us a Europe or a tiny Europe, because every part of Slovenia has pretty much a different landscape. You've got mountains, you've got the seaside, you've got karst, you've got, plains, lots of things to do as well. So you're very welcome to visit, and please enjoy your stay. Fakih121 says, I've been waiting for this engine to come stateside. Definitely needs to be paired with a manual. Yes and no, I suppose. I mean, this is really a preference. The manual transmission is truly excellent, I would say. It's lovely to use, lovely to shift, very accurate, very mechanical, and light enough that it's not annoying. So I would say the manual is excellent, but if you do a lot of driving, a lot of traffic jams and such, I would say just go for the manual, because your left foot will thank you. So without being too long, I'm going to lump three comments into one sort of. Mr. Damo D says, I love this car. I love naturally aspirated engines too. They have a solid, perky, responsive feel. Gallo4972 said, sounds like a great base engine for Mazda to perfect its reliability this generation. And TSGG9DK says, great review about the engine. I was hyped up like you about it. Slovenia is beautiful. We drove through it in 2005. So yeah, naturally aspirated engines are kind of like a dying breed, really. I mean, almost no one now does them except maybe Mazda. Everything is now turbocharged, and yeah, they are solid. They're quite perky. They are responsive. But personally, while I love them and I grew up with naturally aspirated engines, I do have to say I always miss the torque of a turbocharged engine nowadays. I do. I'm sorry. As for the great base engine for Mazda to perfect its reliability, yes, I mean, this is kind of like a new type of engine, and Mazda is refining it. It's also going to make that 3.3 liter for the CX-60, the 6-cylinder one, which is going to be pretty interesting. As for the hyped up about the engine and that Slovenia is beautiful, well, yeah, I was too, and thank you. It is. It's a very nice place. Last but not least, the dude 50447 says, few corrections. The Skyactiv X engine never turns off the spark plugs at any RPM. It's called spark plug controlled compression ignition for a reason. So CPPI, I believe, or SPPI. And yeah, that was a bit of my fault. I was talking, and I just wanted to simplify things, saying, oh, it turns off its spark plugs, which of course is not true. So thank you for the correction. I'm not going to bore everyone with technical details, but it is pretty interesting. Mazda basically squirts in fuel into the cylinder and then compresses it, and then at the very end it squirts another little bit in, which the spark plug then ignites, but only that little bit, and that explosion then ignites and compresses the rest of the mixture. So it's really complicated in a way. I don't know how they got to all of this, but it is fascinating, and this is how the X engine works, basically.